I think where people get confused is, what about the conflict of interest? Like, how do you deal with that? Like, where somebody's like, oh, like this person also has more ambitions than just being a 9 to 5 employee, so maybe they won't be the best 9 to 5 employee. I think that's where most of the population is stuck, where they don't want to post, where they don't want to use LinkedIn, because they think that people will think that they're not as serious about their career. So how do we overcome that block?
So I think that's a mindset shift, right? If you're talking about the folks in the company, the managers and up in C suites, thinking that it's a hindrance, but don't you want employees with ambition? Right? There's nothing wrong with that. Like you can't really expect all your employees to spend their 50, 60 years with one organization. Now there are some that do for sure, but we're in a different time. We're not talking 50, 60 years ago. We're talking in today's age. And so that's probably not likely, but at the same time, how much value can you get out of that? And so I can give personal examples of where my personal brand helped me in corporate up into the current company I work now. And so the most recent one was a conversation with a gentleman in the elevator just this week. He said, "Hey, I noticed your podcast on LinkedIn." I was like, "Oh, appreciate that." He said, "Yeah, it's pretty good." I was like, "Oh, thanks." Didn't know, but I knew people watched. When I joined the company I currently work for, I ran into this woman who said, "Oh my God, you're Orlando." I was like, "Yes." I'm like, "Do I know you?" I was like, she goes, "No, but I watched your podcast for almost 2 years when I was at work, and it kept me encouraged. And to see you working in the same organization is great." She goes, "I tell everybody about your podcast." And that day I was just on cloud nine. Prashha. I was like, "Oh wow, that's absolutely amazing." Didn't know, but you just never know who's watching. And so I think doing that and being in an organization that honors that and that understands the value you can bring by having a personal brand is great. Now, it all depends on who you are too. If your goal is not to really build it big and you're getting kickback, then you have a decision. And I've been in that where I had my career coaching program posted, and I worked for a staffing agency. The VP seen it and said, "Hey, this is a conflict of interest. You got to shut down that website." And I was not happy. And a year later, I left that organization. I said, "Oh no, I can't be controlled by an organization. LinkedIn is completely mine. It's no one else's. It's not the organization's. And so they can't control what I put on there as long as it's not damaging the credibility of the company." Right. So be mindful of the content you're putting out there. But as long as it's positive information, there shouldn't be really a conflict and it doesn't interfere with business operations. And so just be mindful of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when I started, I did a conflict of interest form that you fill at your job. Like, let everyone know that this is happening. If you are afraid, like,
Mm.
follow the steps, follow the procedures, keep people posted. And that would be the best way to go about it, I think. Sometimes people skip the steps. But yeah, that being said, I think, yeah, conflict of interest, working
Mhm.
through the procedures at work so that nobody, like, jumps at you. But I think what you said, I love that, because if the company does not allow you to grow outside, then do you really even want to stay there? Like, is that the right organization for you? And you have to make that choice. I
Right.
mean, and I think a lot of job seekers think they have no choice. But you being in talent, there is less talent for the jobs that are open. Like, you guys are more desperate
Yeah.
for the right people than people are desperate for jobs. Like, I'm like, only if you knew how much organizations are working hard to find the right people, you would be surprised, like, how crazy it is on the other side of the table. And you will find the perfect job if you have a great brand. You will even have the opportunity to leverage that brand, get better opportunities even in the future. So in your experience, have you seen people get more money, better titles because of their personal brand, Orlando?
So I don't know to the extent if they got more income from it by being hired by the organization, but I do know it's helped for sure. Right, to my earlier points, they stood out. So he or she, and so it was almost like they already knew who they were, and it was like, wow, it goes from, hey, let's see if they're a good fit, to I got to know who this person is. I got to get them on the phone and talk to them, and that's an icebreaker to say, hey, I see you do this. You have a newsletter going on, and you're talking about best practices in tech, or cybersecurity or whatever. we kind of like what you're saying because it's some relevant stuff, and we notice what you talk about is kind of a project we're working on. And so that's what drew me to you because I came across your content. And so let's have a conversation about that. If we have an opportunity, et cetera, I think you'd be a good fit. And so that's how it can immediately help you. Now, to leverage it outside of that, as long as there's no conflict, that's when, you can monetize those efforts there, but it can absolutely help you. And for the companies, and I like always putting the onus on both the employee and the employer, is that employers have to wake up and stop resting on their laurels and getting out of traditional thought processes and going after these folks, whether or not they have a personal brand, but that's something to add to their niche to really identify folks that that can be an impact into the business depending on where they're landed. And so I don't see any issues. There shouldn't be any issues with it as long as there's no conflict of interest.